Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info. In 1992, Barrie Rutter directed and played the title role in Shakespeare's Richard III for what became the inaugural production of Northern Broadsides, a Halifax-based theatre company with a reputation for touring classical works, especially Shakespeare, performed by northern actors in their own accents. 25 years later, Rutter is returning to the city where he grew up to direct Mat Fraser in the role of Richard as part of Hull's 2017 City of Culture. When I spoke to Barrie during rehearsals for the play, in a conversation that I should perhaps warn contains some strong language, I asked him whether he thought that Richard III, the story of the corrupt leader of a major Western country who would lie and scheme to get his own way, had any contemporary relevance.
Well, the news the other day, it's not something we're putting into the design, but all the words are ringing out, and you can make your own story up, can't you?
Yeah.
I don't like to impinge on an exact sort of historical period on things. I mean, I think Shakespeare's wider than that. But certainly there will be lines that have that ring out in terms of what we're going through at the moment.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to hear the audience, how they react to, like you said, to certain lines, but they might laugh at certain lines more or be shocked at certain lines more.
Yeah. I sort of don't have them to hand at the moment, thinking about them, but I'm sure they're in there.
Yeah. Well, Northern Broadsides, it started in 1992 in Hull with a production of Richard III, which you directed and performed in on that occasion. And now you're back in Hull on the company's 25th anniversary, with the same play. Is there any reason why you wanted to come back to this particular play, or do you think it was just a nice, neat way of reviving it?
I think all the gods were in place to do it again.
Yeah.
25 years later, and I think Dionysus looked down and said, "Right, all 2017 will correspond with Broadside's 25th." And it 2 years ago when the decision came to all, and I first met the organisers, Martin Green of all 2017. It was a dot on the card. It was supported from the very, very first day.
Yeah.
And then here at Hull Truck with Mark Babbage and his team.
Yeah. So you're from Hull, of course, so it must have been quite a big thing.
From Hull, yeah. So that was part of the immaculate lineage, as it were.
Yes. The Broadsides website makes it sound quite easy that 25 years ago your agent suggested you start your own company. You got a grant from Hull City Council, an office space in Halifax, and that was it. But was it quite that straightforward?
No, it wasn't. I mean, it was all off at one point because the figures just didn't add up for what we could glean via the Arts Council and help from Bradford Theatres at the time and Hull City Council and the West Yorkshire Arts Council at the time. But it was all off, and then miraculously some more money was found from the touring office of the Arts Council.
Yeah.
And it was on again, we got welcomed. I mean, we really did. I've often said this. I didn't know we'd have a year 2, never mind a year 25.
Yeah.
But something happened, and something was good. Actors liked it. Particularly, I remember my old mate Brian Glover, who was in the first production.
Yeah.
He said, "You've got to do this again, Rutter. You've hit summit here." And it was a minor revolution in 92. It wouldn't be now, because it's been done and the world's much richer and wider and more diverse now.
Yeah.
But then we were in the teeth of a raging recession, and, what idiot would start a theatre company in that and say, everybody in it will be from the north and we'll do a classic play and kings will speak as commoners, and it'll just be the syntax that makes the difference.
Yeah, I mean, you've described the aesthetic of the company as being northern voices doing classical work in non-velvet spaces, but since then, like you say, regional accents have become more common, even at the RSC, and velvet curtains aren't quite as common as they were. But how was it actually received that in 1992? Well,
it was received a bit like a breath of fresh air. I've just been having a look at some of the early stuff which the team here at Hull have dug out. The Telegraph said it will tour Yorkshire, it should tour the country.
Yeah.
And there was one review that said those tired old lines came out fresh minted. It made an impact. It was a very small sort of stone dropped into a pebble, but the wavelets created were astonishingly good and widespread.
Was there any resistance to it, though, to what you were trying to do?
There was some resistance. There was some local resistance in all. We took rather a big chunk of the available sort of festival money, because they were always celebrating its links with Europe and its I think 700 years of becoming a city.
Right.
That was Hull's first ever sort of major festival, and we were a big company. You know, we were 16 actors, 4 crew, and it was a big part of the festival. But having said that, you know, it led to nothing but good.
Yeah. And looking back, it looks like you were reviving the old actor-manager tradition, a company run by an actor appearing in the productions and directing them, which is quite unusual to have a company run by an actor these days.
I think there's only 2 of us in the country. There's me and Mike Shepherd at Knee High.
Of course, yeah.
We're the only 2 that take Arts Council money.
Yeah, yeah. Kenneth Branagh's done a little bit in London as well.
Yeah, but his money's from film and sort of, you know, that's through fame.
Yeah.
Whereas we, you know, I'm not decrying his fame or even his money, but you know, me and Mike Shepherd, we take, you know, we're at the grassroots, as it were.
Yeah. Was there any notion of creating that or reviving that tradition when you started? You said you didn't even know if you were going to carry on, but was this just a way of getting work, do you think?
Well, initially, it was just me with a burning sort of desire to get it on.
Yeah.
You know, I thought I had one good idea. So, you know, I mean, Polly Hemingway, who played Margaret in the first production, she said to her friend, "I think he's mad, but it sounds so exciting, I'm going to go with it." I mean, nobody knew what it was until we got on the stage. You know, it wasn't earth-shatteringly... you know, it wasn't a Vesuvius erupting, but in its own way, you know, looking back at those early notices in the Guardian, the Telegraph, the Observer, and the Independent as well. I mean, it was something major, and that's why lots of people, including the funding bodies, said, you know, where's round 2?
Yeah.
So I had to think on.
The language of, particularly of Shakespeare, but the other classical plays that you do as well, is very important to you. You've often said, the poetry of it. But you don't have a great deal of time for psychological examinations of characters, do you? Everything comes from the language.
I don't. There is much more musicality and rock and roll and aids to how to do plays in the construction of these classics than any sort of, you know... I mean, somebody says Richard III is a study in evil. It's not it's a study in fuck all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He didn't sit down and write this as a study in evil. He just used all of that and put it into a play. Wrote it for a company that he knew, and it went on the stage. 400 years of scholarship and quasi-scholarship have made it a study in evil. It's nothing of the sort. It's a rollicking good play.
Yeah, which was written for popular audiences at the time and was probably very popular on stage.
Indeed. Yeah. Yeah. I don't find any value in the psychology. You know, the psychology of 400 years ago was verbal.
Yeah.
Too often, a psychological sort of showing of this means that you have to pause, and every bloody play is 4.5 hours long.
Yeah.
You know, they turned on a sixpence verbally with their psychology 400 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, Richard says to Lady Anne, "Let's leave this keen encounter of our wits and fall something into a slower method." You know, and that gives you a clue as how to do the previous 50 lines.
Yes.
And it's foolish not to.
The opening of Romeo and Juliet talks about the 2-hour traffic of our stage, and it's very rare that Shakespeare plays anything like that short. So there must be something extra we're putting into it, mustn't there?
True. But also, he did edit. We know he cut and edited as well 400 years ago, and we often have the full script. But anyway, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Where do you actually start from in rehearsals? And do you sit around and analyse the language, or do you get the actors on the feet straight away?
Well, come on. Act 1, scene 1. Get on your feet.
Right.
Yeah, get on your feet. It's the best way to do it, I find.
Yeah.
All that sort of examination of text and, what some images or metaphors might mean, they go along with it. I certainly don't sit down. I do have that luxury. We've got 3 weeks rehearsal, 16 days of rehearsal. That's all we've got to do this. That's 3 Monday to Fridays plus 2 half Saturdays. Adds up to 15 days, 16 days. And then we go into technical.
If an actor did come to you and ask for their motivation or something like that, what would they get back from you?
You're getting paid on Friday. No, I mean, there's ways of helping people who might be struggling. I remember one years ago, Andy Cryer, who was present in the Cyrano that's at the Lowry this week, directed by Conrad Nelson. At 94, he was playing Puck, and he looked at me one day about week 2 of rehearsal. He said, Barry, who is Puck? And I said, he's a cunt from Scarborough, and I'll get on with it. Because Andy was born in Scarborough.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's a bit flip, but, it sort of sums up my approach.
Yeah.
But it's much more about the music and the language and the evidence within the text, rather than some, quasi psychological approach as if these people existed.
Yeah.
It's our job to convince through acting and production that they exist, or at least that what comes out of our mouths deserves to come out of it.
Yeah.
And the audience do the rest of the work. That's why three-dimensional theatre is the sort of pinnacle of acting.
Yeah. Another way you've often gone against the grain is with the sizes of the casts that you've gone around with. At a time when a lot of companies are cutting down the cast size, especially when touring, to save money, you've managed to carry on touring with pretty large companies of actors, haven't you? It's
one of our greatest calling cards. If we get cut in the next round, and we're, everybody from the National Theatre to us is waiting for July the 1st to see if we get cuts, then I don't want to die by 1,000 cuts, which is politically what's happening. The NHS, the BBC, it's all being chipped away at. All of the welfare, all of it is being chipped away at. And one can see, death by 1,000 cuts, and I don't want that.
Yeah.
So we've asked for more money because it's our calling card. What other big company or what other touring company puts out 16 actors regularly? We do. And we've never been in the red because as a touring company, you can't go in the red because you can't bail a touring company out. You can a building, and buildings get bailed out left, right and centre. West Yorkshire Playhouse has been bailed out three times in the past 10 years. Old Truck, themselves were bailed out.
Yeah.
To the tune of over £1 million. Well, we're asking for nowhere near that.
But that must have your accountants tearing their hair out sometime, because your cast is your biggest expense usually, isn't it?
Yeah, but we've never been in the red ever.
Yeah.
Ever. We've got no support system to go into the red with.
Yeah.
So we make it work.
Another challenge for the people that work with you is, which is another part of the company's ethos, really, is the types of venues that you play. You play a variety of different venues. We
play a variety of different shapes.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
The non-velvet is a bit of an old shoe from the first decade, actually, because they don't exist as much as they did before.
No.
Local authorities certainly don't have as much money to throw up pop-up places, unless you're specially funded to do it.
Yeah.
But in terms of shapes, nobody does what we do. No touring company does of our size does what we do week in, week out. Pros, in the round, traverse, and apron, and then thrust. We change wherever we go.
Yeah, that must put extra pressure on your 3 weeks rehearsal to think you might be stood facing one direction at one theatre, and then the other, it just won't work in another theatre. And the same for your designers as well.
It's part of the fun, and designers take it into consideration. For instance, like at the New Vic, when we do a co-pro at the New Vic, there will be some verticals built and designed that will go on the road with us when we go to a proscenium arch.
Yeah.
Similarly, when we go back to Scarborough in the round, none of the verticals appear. Nobody gets shortchanged. You just adapt to the shape that you're in.
Yeah. Do the plays actually feel significantly different in different places?
Oh, yeah. The people at the venue don't know, but the difference that actors recognise and the audiences who see it in more than one venue recognise, and we get quite a few of that who like to see us in more than one place and in a different shape. You know, I mean, to see When We Are Married, which we did last autumn, with no verticals whatsoever, and then see it in a proscenium arch is a completely different thing.
Yeah. You've toured abroad quite a bit as well. So do foreign audiences appreciate the northernness of the approach that you take, or is it just a different take on Shakespeare to them?
I think it's just a different take. I don't think they recognise us unless it's written in their own language within the sort of preparation for the company arriving. I don't think anyone recognises. But you know, our clarity has always been good, whether we're northern or not. So they always get good clarity. I mean, when we last went to China in 2008, I think, with The Tempest. And The Tempest is not well known in China at all. But they got a very good, clear, resonating version of it. And thus we're very, you know, thankful and grateful in that way that says, now we have another play by Shakespeare that we can embrace. Yeah.
So what's a Chinese audience like for Shakespeare? Are they very different to ours?
The surtitles are running at the same time.
Yeah.
So they get the play in Chinese. But I remember Conrad was playing Trinculo, and he came down from the stage into the auditorium, and breaking that fourth wall thing is very, very unusual in China, or it was then in 2008.
Yeah.
You know, as Trinculo, a rather gay Trinculo, he sat on a gentleman's knee in the audience, and they thought this was utterly revolutionary. I mean, this was theatre beyond their expectations, and you know, and was very funny.
Yeah. It sounds like it breaks a few taboos of what we think of as being China.
Yeah.
Okay, looking back over 25 years then at Northern Broadsides, what makes you most proud of what you've done? What were the battles that were most worth fighting?
Well, getting off the ground in the first place, but then the employment of actors and crew. I mean, you know, when we did Wars of the Roses for our 15th birthday, you know, we had 21 actors on the stage and 5 crew on the money that we were on. And in every single venue, we did a trilogy every Saturday. Nobody had done that before. Nobody. Yeah. And it was thrilling.
It's the sort of thing you only expect from the national theatre companies, really, isn't it?
National, the RSC, or those that get millions. You know, we got, I think we were on about 178,000 then.
Yeah.
You know, we put 21 actors on the stage. Everybody got paid. Everybody's expenses were found. You know, nobody got shortchanged.
Yeah. And you've carried on for another 10 years since then.
We've carried on for another 10 years.
Your current Richard is played by Mat Fraser. A lot of the reports about his casting have focused on his disability, but presumably you've seen in him an actor who can really pull off a very challenging Shakespeare role, which you've played yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's fascinating. It's fascinating directing him.
Yeah.
Because, you know, his own deformity isn't sensational to him.
No.
And I find myself saying, can you make that more awkward? Because, well, theatrically, you want the awkwardness of it.
Yes.
You want the, you know, he always says, look, my deformity has never been a disability.
Yeah. You
know, because you adapt. If that's how you're born, that's how you're born, you adapt. Whereas theatrically, you want it to be a little bit more awkward than he himself might make it.
Yes.
And so he's I mean, to get down on one knee and pick up a dagger, for instance, is an awkward thing to do. So you make the awkwardness theatrical.
So how did you come across him? How did you come to cast him?
Well, I was casting the play, and we got some help from a casting director to cast the part of Richard. I mean, it's no secret that, many people were asked before Mat. I'm not denigrating him, but then the casting director gave me this list, and Mat was one of them. And I met him, and I took him through the part, and we talked about things, and we did the first speech, and it was a revelation, or at least a sort of revelation that we could use and take on into the full production. So I cast him. Also, Mat just happens to be a rather good percussionist. He played with Coldplay at the Paralympics. Look it up. It's on YouTube. It's on Google, YouTube, and that fell perfectly into how we do the battles, because we've always done battles without swords. I can't bear swords. I get in the way. But you've got to rehearse the fucking things every day and on tour and all like that.
Yes.
And so we do. And so we've got a big, wonderful, hopefully wonderful percussive battle at the end, where Mat can use his skills as a percussion as a metaphor for fighting.
The rest of the cast, are they the usual mix of Broadsides regulars and new people?
Broadsiders, people from Hullensians, obviously, because this is not a production that's going to tour. This is just for Hull 2017, customised for this theatre, and then we're doing 1 week in Halifax at our house just for our local audience and those who want to come and celebrate 25 years with us.
Yeah. Are you finding anything different in the play to what you found 25 years ago?
I find it different all the time. I mean, to hear someone else speak it and then for me to sort of guide it along the way. I mean, there are no revelations in terms of the actual story, but just the internal revelations of bits of music in the text. I mean, the way text is put together musically with musicality and stuff. I'm enjoying, really enjoying, and it's the 6th time I've directed it, and I'm enjoying it more and more.
Yeah,
it's a wonderful piece. I find it terrific.
Do you find, as you get older, you see more things in not just this, but in the Shakespeare plays that you direct?
Possibly, but also it's because new people are in the roles, and different people are in the roles, and so their energies, their energies and creativity and wonderful staging or not, and mistakes that lead to something else, it's all creative. Nothing's wasted, and just those new attitudes, a new cast and a new designer. I was very keen to have a new designer so that, there could be a semblance of a different look on it. And that's furthered my new interest in it.
So what's next for Broadsides? Not necessarily for the next 25 years, but for the foreseeable future.
Well, we're funded like everyone else. We're funded until next April.
Yeah.
That's when, and beyond that is when we get the news this July of what's going to happen to us in terms of funding. Now, Conrad's Cyrano is out. I'm doing a new piece by Blake Morrison, which is a French comedy originally. That's for the autumn tour. And then next year, Conrad will do the spring tour, which will be Dickens's Hard Times.
Right.
And I'm doing a show at the invitation of Emma Rice in the Wanamaker at the Globe.
Oh, right.
So, and that will be a play that I've long wanted to do, and it will be a co-production between Broadsides and the Globe in the Wanamaker.
Right.
Next winter season.
For Emma Rice's last season there.
Emma Rice's last season, and bless her, she wanted to stay on so that I could get my production on. She was going to leave at the end of this summer, but she's leaving at the end of her winter season now. She's paid me the great compliment of saying, I wanted to see you all on the stage at the Wanamaker, so I'm staying on till the April.
Barrie Rutter's production of Richard III will run at Hull Theatre from the 4th to the 27th of May 2017. It will then have a short run at the Viaduct Theatre in Halifax, or Our House as Barrie referred to it, from the 30th of May to the 3rd of June. For more information, see www.northern-broadsides.co.uk. You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.